All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going deep on how indie games are changing the game, literally, and how Hades, well, Hades is just something special.
Yeah, it really is in a league of its own.
For the longest time, you kind of felt like it was only the big studios, the ones with all the cash, who could really make waves in the gaming world.
Right, like those huge blockbuster titles.
But then, over the past 15 years, maybe even a bit longer, we've seen this incredible surge of indie games.
And they proved that passion, a good idea, those can really hold their own.
Oh, absolutely. They showed that you don't need a zillion-dollar marketing blitz to win over players.
You just need a truly great game.
Exactly. And that brings us to, well, Hades.
Perfect example of how indie games aren't just keeping up anymore, they're setting a whole new standard.
So for anyone out there who hasn't had the chance to play it, Hades is what you'd call a roguelike dungeon crawler.
Set in the world of Greek mythology.
You play as Zagreus, son of Hades, and the goal is to escape the underworld.
Now, I know roguelike gets tossed around a lot.
It does, so for clarity,
It basically means you die, you start over, levels change each time.
the layout's never the same twice.
And most roguelikes, they really lean into that whole gameplay loop, die, restart, try to get a bit further each time.
It's a cycle, but in Hades, they do something really special with it.
They actually weave a captivating story into this structure that's inherently repetitive.
So you're not just grinding the same levels.
Every death in Hades, it actually tells you more about the characters, the world.
It all unfolds bit by bit.
Right. Every time Zagreus bites the dust and ends up back in the house of Hades, you get to interact with this amazing cast of characters.
Nyx, Achilles, even Thanatos, the god of death himself.
And these aren't just, those bland NPCs spewing exposition.
They feel real.
They have their own quirks, their own relationships, their own motivations even.
They react to how you're doing. They offer advice.
They might even poke fun at your failures.
It's brilliant how they turned what could be a frustrating mechanic into a way to build the world in these really fleshed out characters.
So clever.
I remember when I first met Thanatos, I was kind of intimidated, but then he turned out to be this surprisingly complex character.
He's got that dry humor.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of Hades. It's not just about fighting your way through dungeons, it's about getting to know these fascinating characters.
Uncovering this really rich narrative.
And the gameplay, it's so smooth, so polished.
You've got all sorts of weapons to choose from.
Like the Stygian blade, your classic sword.
Or the twin fists of Malphon, if you prefer getting up close and personal.
Every weapon feels different, satisfying.
They really nailed the feel of the combat.
And then there are the boons, these blessings from the Olympian gods.
Zeus, Athena, Poseidon.
They can totally change how you play.
Zeus might give you those lightning-infused attacks.
Athena could grant you a shield that deflects attacks.
It's all about experimentation.
Seeing what crazy builds you can put together.
You might start with ranged attacks, using the bow.
And then, bam! A boon from Ares turns you into this close combat berserker.
It keeps things fresh, keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. No two runs are ever the same.
You're constantly adapting, based on the boons you get, the enemies you face.
It's this perfect mix of skill, strategy, and, a bit of luck.
You gotta have some luck on your side.
And visually, Hades is just, wow.
It's breathtaking.
All hand-drawn.
The way they bring the underworld to life, it's just stunning.
Yeah, it's dark, it's moody, but it's also vibrant, full of personality.
You've got the fiery pits of Tartarus, then the lush gardens of Elysium.
And the characters, their designs are so striking.
Every goddess has this unique look that reflects their personality, their powers.
It's like they leaped right out of the myths.
And the music, oh, we can't forget the music.
The music is just as captivating.
Darren Korb, the composer, he absolutely nailed it.
The soundtrack perfectly captures the atmosphere.
From those haunting melodies in the House of Hades.
To the battle themes that just get your heart pounding.
The music is top tier.
I still find myself humming the House of Hades.
No escape, that one's a classic.
They're just so catchy and it all comes together.
The story, the gameplay, the art, the music.
It creates this truly unique, unforgettable experience.
It's more than just a game, it's an experience.
And here's something else that's really interesting about Hades. The way it was developed.
Oh yeah, their approach was pretty innovative.
Supergiant Games actually released the game in early access back in 2018.
Which was a pretty bold move at the time.
Early access was still relatively new.
A lot of developers were hesitant to release an unfinished game.
Put it out there for everyone to see.
But Supergiant Games, they saw it as a chance to get feedback.
Involve the community.
They were incredibly transparent.
Laid out their roadmap.
Actively sought feedback.
They incorporated those suggestions into the game.
So by the time Hades officially launched in 2020,
it was this polished gem.
And in many ways, it was shaped by the players themselves
It's a great example of how indie developers can use community feedback.
to make their games even better.
And then came the moment when Hades went from indie darling,
To full-blown phenomena.
it was everywhere.
It got near universal acclaim
Not just from indie fans.
from the entire gaming world.
It was nominated for and won a ton of Game of the Year awards.
Even beating out some of those massive AAA titles.
The ones with budgets that could, well, fund a small country.
It was a real turning point.
Not just for Supergiant Games, but for the whole indie game scene.
It showed that indie games could stand with the giants.
And even come out on top.
It was a statement.
You know, a testament to quality, innovation, and genuine heart.
Those things can win out.
Even in an industry that's often all about marketing and big-name franchises.
It was a breath of fresh air.
And it wasn't just the critics.
Players loved it too.
It resonated with a massive audience.
Hardcore gamers.
Casual players.
It struck this perfect balance.
Accessibility and depth.
Anyone could pick it up and enjoy it.
But it also had layers.
For those who wanted to master the mechanics.
Explore all its secrets.
It defied categorization.
An indie game that felt like a AAA title.
A roguelike with heart.
A game for everyone.
And that, in a way, captures the impact of indie games on the industry.
They're breaking down barriers.
Challenging norms.
Proving that there's a huge market for games that are innovative, creative,
And most importantly, fun.
fun to play.
So let's talk bigger picture for a second.
How is the success of Hades and the rise of indie games in general changing the landscape of gaming?
Well, one of the biggest things is the emphasis on creative freedom.
Indie developers, they're often driven by passion projects.
By those unique ideas they want to bring to life.
They're not beholden to shareholders.
No pressure to churn out sequels that just rehash the same old formula.
They can take risks,
Experiment.
push the boundaries of what a game can be.
And that leads to a level of innovation that you don't always see in the AAA world.
Indie developers are always coming up with new genres, mechanics, storytelling techniques.
They challenge the status quo,
And another key factor is the rise of early access and community involvement.
like we saw with Hades.
It's becoming more and more common.
Developers are seeing the value of bringing players into the process.
That's a smart move.
Build a sense of community.
Get valuable feedback early on.
Generate excitement for the game.
And then there's the whole thing about team size.
Hades was developed by a team of fewer than 20 people.
Think about
A
that.
game that won multiple Game of the Year awards.
Captivated millions of players.
Created by a team smaller than some high school classes.
It's incredible.
It proves you don't need a massive team or budget.
It's about passion, talent, and a clear vision.
And we should also talk about the impact on accessibility and affordability.
Definitely.
Indie games are often priced much lower than AAA titles.
Makes them accessible to a wider audience,
They're breaking down those financial barriers.
allowing more people to experience gaming.
Hades is a perfect example.
AAA quality at a fraction of the price.
That's a huge part of why it resonated with so many people.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that players value innovation, creativity.
A compelling experience.
Those things matter most.
So what do you think? How has all of this impacted players in the industry overall?
I think for players, Hades was like a real eye-opener.
It showed that roguelikes could be, well, more than just hack and slash.
More than just dying over and over again.
You had this deep story, characters you actually cared about.
It was so well made. The art, the music, the controls, everything.
It felt like a big budget game, but with that indie soul.
It made people rethink what indie games could be.
And for developers, I think Hades raised the bar.
Especially for indie studios.
You could achieve that level of quality, get critical acclaim, without a huge team or budget.
It was inspiring.
I think a lot of developers saw Hades and thought, we can do that.
We can tell great stories, make innovative games, make something special.
And it wasn't just about the game itself. It was Supergiant's approach.
Their transparency, the way they talked to the community.
That early access period was brilliant.
They made players feel like they were part of it.
Built up so much excitement.
And for the industry as a whole, I think Hades was a wake-up call.
There's a huge audience out there.
They want something different, something new.
In a market that's full of sequels and reboots.
Hades proved that there's still room for original ideas.
And players are willing to embrace them.
So we've talked about the impact on players, developers, the industry.
What about its legacy, though?
How has Hades influenced gaming history?
Well, it's safe to say Hades has become a cultural touchstone.
It's bigger than just gaming now.
You see it everywhere. Memes, fan art, cosplay.
It's even sparked conversations about mythology and storytelling.
In academic circles even.
It's reached people beyond the typical gamer.
That says a lot about the power of the story, the
Yeah.
characters.
The world they built.
Hades tapped into something universal,
It's about family, rebellion, finding yourself.
that struggle to break free, forge your own path.
Those themes resonate with everyone, gamer or not.
And it does all that while still being incredibly fun to play.
It's a testament to the talent and vision of the team.
It's a masterpiece of game design.
Combining those innovative mechanics with a story that just pulls you in.
It all works so well together.
Have we seen other games influenced by Hades?
Oh, absolutely.
It's inspired a whole wave of indie developers.
To push the limits of what their games can do.
We're seeing more roguelikes with rich stories, characters that feel real, worlds you want to explore.
Games like Dead Cells, Hollow Knight, Returnal.
They all owe something to Hades.
They took what Supergiant did and built on it, expanded the genre.
And this is just the beginning.
Hades showed that there's a big appetite for indie games that are polished, innovative, and, hit you in the feels.
It created a space for smaller teams to really shine.
Show off their talent, their vision.
And it's exciting.
It really is. Hades proved that indie games can be just as big, just as impactful as any AAA title.
And with Hades II coming,
What does the future hold for indie games?
that's a great question. Hades has changed the game.
Indie games aren't just a niche anymore. They're driving the industry forward.
They're pushing the boundaries, innovating, telling stories that matter.
And with the rise of digital platforms,
Steam, Epic Games Store, itch.io.
indie developers have more ways than ever to reach players.
They don't need publishers anymore.
They can build their own communities, connect directly with fans.
Create a sustainable way to keep making games.
It's a great time to be an indie developer.
We're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
We're going to see even more indie games that break the mold,
That challenge our expectations.
that tell stories that stay with us.
More experimentation, more innovation.
More games that make us rethink what a game can be.
And I think Hades II is going to be leading the charge.
It's going to set a new standard.
Inspire countless other developers.
To dream big.
So where does that leave us?
I think we're at a turning point.
Hades showed that indie games are a force to be reckoned with.
They're here to stay.
And with Hades II on the way,
The future of indie games is bright.
really bright. It's really something to think one game made by a team that size could have this kind of impact.
It shows you what passion can do, what real creativity can achieve.
Hades wasn't just well-made. It felt like something they poured their hearts into.
Players can feel that, that genuine love for the project.
And it wasn't just the game. It was how they did it, how open they were.
Supergiant Games, they were so transparent, always listening to the community.
It was a different way of doing things.
They showed that indie developers can build a real connection with their players.
And that's powerful.
It really is.
So we've talked about where Hades came from, where indie games are now, but what about the future? What do you think the lasting impact of Hades will be?
I think it's shown that people want games that are different, that are creative, that make you feel something.
Games with heart.
And that's going to inspire a whole new wave of developers.
To push the boundaries even further.
Exactly. We're going to see more indie games that break the rules, that try new things, that tell stories that really connect with people.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
It really is. Hades proved that indie games can be just as big, just as important as anything coming out of those huge studios.
And with Hades II on the way, who knows what's next?
The possibilities are endless.
Before we wrap this up, I gotta ask, what are you most excited for in Hades II?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really want to see where they take the story, the world.
The first game left us with so many questions.
So many threads hanging.
And what about the new characters?
Yeah.
Challenges?
And of course, the gameplay. They've already teased some new stuff.
New weapons, new abilities. I bet they've got some surprises up their sleeves.
I can't wait to see it all.
I guess we'll just have to be patient. But Hades II is going to be huge, that's for sure.
And it's going to be interesting to see how it shapes the future of indie games.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive, it's given us a lot to think about.
Where the industry's headed, what indie developers are capable of.
So to anyone listening, if you haven't played Hades, you really should.
It's something special.
It shows what happens when you combine creativity, passion, and a real dedication to quality.
Maybe it'll even inspire you to make your own indie game someday.
That's a great thought. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into Hades.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep playing, and keep supporting those amazing indie games out there.